Alrighty, first video that I have shot since I cut my hair. I don't know if you can even tell because I have it in pigtails, but it is significantly shorter and ooh, back. Check it out. Oh, she's subversive now. Hello guys, hi. If you are just now meeting me for the first time, my name is Cheyenne Jazz Wise. I am a seamstress, cosplayer, toy collector, nerd person, and this is my place where all of the overspill of stuff in my brain is gonna live, and also just where I document my process of making cosplays, because I like to look at it back later and I'm weird.
In case you haven't noticed, I'm weird. I'm a weirdo.
So if you couldn't tell from all of this, your girl is mentally ill. I know, shocking. And like, I'm pretty sure every single other mentally ill woman in America, I have absolutely fallen in love with the film Pearl.
I want to be loved from as many people as possible. But truth is, I'm not really a good person.
For reference, I do really like Ty West's work. I've seen a couple of his films. I've always really liked them. I didn't see X when it came out. It was one of those things where I was like, oh, that'd be interesting. And then I kind of forgot about it and it kind of fell off on my interest kind of curve. And then Pearl came out and it seemed so much more my alley. I was like, okay, this is like a period piece, mentally ill girl, like golden age of Hollywood, Technicolor, Wizard of Oz nightmare thing. I would really like to see this. And I didn't get to go see it when it was in theaters, which I will regret probably for the rest of my life, because it was right before I was about to get married and I just did not have time. And it kept coming up in the like movies we think you'll like on streaming, because Amazon Prime truly has figured out my film taste. They will recommend movies that I'm like, wow, you really got me there. You really got me. You really recommended Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Jennifer's Body in the exact same, yep, you got me. And there was a particular night, I had a really rough night at work and my husband was gone for the weekend and I was just kind of like, you know what? I really want to watch this. So I went and purchased some legal herbal gummy supplements. I live in Las Vegas. It's very legal. And I had one of those and I put Pearl on, just rented it on streaming, and felt so seen related to it. There were bits in the monologue that Mia Goth has at towards the end of the film that I genuinely was like, am I hallucinating this because I'm a little high? Like, where it felt directly pointed at me. I told you I'm mentally ill. And it became a movie that became a really intense comfort for me. I bought the Blu-ray of it and it became a thing that I was watching like once a week for the last couple of months. And I have other cosplays that I was planning to start before that, or other things that would be more topical for me to do, right? Like I really should be working on Princess Peach right now because the Super Mario movie is coming out. Like that's the type of thing I should be doing. But no, the urge to cosplay Pearl kind of gripped me and it would not let me rest until I thought through all of it and found all the fabrics I wanted to do and thought through every single aspect of it. And I just feel compelled to put this together. So that's what we're doing and what we're talking about. Oh, new tattoo, by the way. Isn't it cute? It's a jack-o'-lantern with little heart eyes. It's one of my wedding gifts. But anyway, so we're gonna talk about Pearl. I initially looked, I was like, maybe I'll just buy this because this is just something I really want to do. And I wasn't positive that I wanted to sew it and I couldn't find anything that I liked that looked good enough, right? The dress is, I want to do the red dress that she wears at the end of the movie. And the dress is relatively simple, right? It has some really distinct elements, but it's relatively simple. And I was like, I don't know if it's gonna be worth making, but none of the like Pearl costume dresses I could find looked the way that I wanted at all. So I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna have to make it. And I thought about it and I was kind of like, if I am going to make it, I think I might make something that is a little bit more snazzy because it's fun for me. And I kind of was really inspired by the dance number in the film. It's got this very intense kind of dreamlike quality to it. And I liked the idea of almost taking that dress and turning it up a little bit, sort of like this is like a dream sequence version of this outfit, because it gives me license to kind of play around with it, fudge with the look of it a little bit, and also to add some sparkly bits. And I can never resist a sparkly bit, so that's what we're doing. So let's just talk about materials and patterns and stuff before I get started. I've probably mentioned it on here. I have definitely mentioned it on my TikTok before, but I'm a huge fan of Angela Clayton. I've been following her since Tumblr. She's way younger than me, and she like hits my inferiority complex real hard sometimes, but she's so talented that I can't even be mad about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, but you're getting everything you deserve. I love seeing her. I love her. Angela Clayton, if you ever see this, I love you. I think you are so talented. And every time that McCall's puts out an Angela Clayton pattern, I buy it, partially because, again, I love her and I want her to succeed, but also because they're always really historical and beautiful and cool. We're using this pattern here. This is McCall's M8304. She just put this out really recently, and it is an 1890s tea gown pattern. Now, it's obviously not exactly like Pearl's dress, right? Because Pearl's dress has a bodice and a skirt as opposed to it being one big piece. This dress is obviously longer. It has these little shoulder ruffles. Again, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but in terms of time period, so Pearl is set in 1918. So 1890 would have been roughly 20 years before, and the idea that it's a dress that was her mother's old dress, timeline wise, it kind of made sense to me, and this pattern is just so pretty and just really appealed to me. So I was like, I think I want to make it with this. So we're going to be using this pattern. I am going to be replacing the belt because it has a little belt. I think I'm going to make a little corset belt just because I think it will be cool and nice, and I like making corsety things, and I might put some embroidery on that that's like thematic stuff from the film, but I haven't 100% decided because I haven't 100% decided what that would entail yet. Part of me wants to put like Wizard of Oz stuff on it, but I haven't decided yet. And I'm also not 100% sure if I'm going to be using these little sleeve ruffles because they're absolutely beautiful, but I think they might take it too much into this doesn't look like Pearl's dress. So I haven't 100% decided, but this is the pattern we're going to be using. I'm obviously going to shorten it. I'm going to be using my shorter hoop skirt that I wear for a couple of cosplays. I think the main one is for stocking, but I'm going to be using it for a couple of things, and I'm going to be shortening the sleeves, obviously, but roughly this is going to be our base. In terms of fabrics, I decided that I wasn't going to like, you know, go crazy for fabric for this. I wasn't going to splurge too hard because it's relatively simple, and because I think that the lace is the thing that really kind of pumps it up, and also because this is a costume that's like more for me, for fun than for anything. And I was like, I don't want to spend a ton on this. There are a couple of other costumes this year that I really want to splurge on. This isn't necessarily one of those. I got my old standby. This is just really standard polypoplin. This is one of my favorite fabrics to work with. I used to get it all the time in the fashion district. You used to be able to get it for like $2-3 a yard. I think I got this for like $6 a yard on Etsy. So I splurged a little bit. Like, I spent more than I would have, but I don't live in LA anymore. So sometimes that's just what I have to do. But I love polypoplin. One, it's cheap. It's a good weight. It's not shiny, right? Which is the thing that makes fabrics look really cheap. It's pretty sturdy and it doesn't really wrinkle. So this is a great fabric for a costume that I can throw in a suitcase and bring to a con, or wear and roll around on the ground or something, and it'll be fine. So I got 5 yards of this. I probably won't need 5 yards, but the base pattern that I'm using calls for 5 yards. So I was like, I would rather have the extra and then just have extra red fabric for something than run out, because there's no hell worse than realizing that you are out of your fabric, especially when you ordered it online, especially if you're not positive if you can get it again. So just a bright red, because again, it's a fantasy. We really want everything to be like Technicolor bright. One place that I did decide that I wanted to not splurge, but that I felt was really important. I felt like having a lot of really interesting laces was more important to me than the fabric being super fancy, because the bodice of the dress is covered in lace, and I was like, I would really love to find a cool mix. Looked on Etsy and ended up buying this, which is a collection of remnants of different red laces. So some of them, the pieces are pretty short. Some of them, the pieces are like up to a yard. But it's just a couple of different reds, which I think is really nice and really cool. And I think will really help give it some texture. And it's a nice way to do something that's a little more sustainable, right? I definitely want to start playing around with using remnants and getting remnants more for costumes that I put together. I also really, for this, if it hadn't needed so much, I might have tried to thrift some fabric. I think I want to try to do a costume where I thrift all of the materials for it. Maybe this year, maybe next year. I don't know yet. But I have that, and this on its own would not be enough lace to do the entire dress, right? Because she has lace around the bottom, she has lace at the collar. So I also got 15 yards of this really nice red bobbin lace. So this is gonna be the lace that goes around large parts. I think all of this, I'm gonna focus up at the top here, because if you'll notice, in this, there is a yoke, and then all of this is just kind of gathered fabric. So I think I'm gonna really focus all of that lace detail up here on the yoke. I think that's my plan, because I think that'll be the way that I get that look of all that lace without having to bring it all the way down here. And like I said, because I want this to be kind of a daydream, like dream sequence vibe version, I also decided I was gonna get some shinies, but I didn't want to do rhinestones, because rhinestones wouldn't have been super common in this period. So I got some sparkly red beads, you know, kind of like fake glass bead moment. I really like these. One, because they're shiny, they're something that could have existed in the time period, and also because they look a little bit like drops of blood to me, which I think could be really fun depending on how they look next to stuff. And I also found these really, really cool vintage buttons that came all the way from Japan. But I just really like them. They kind of remind me of like jelly-filled cookies. And I like the idea of having really cool looking buttons, a lot of really interesting lace, and just having that kind of be the star of the piece. So that's my current plan. I think we're gonna cut some stuff out tonight, and hopefully I'm hoping that it's not gonna be a project that takes too long, because I would really like to do it now that it's starting to get springtimey here. But yeah, so that's the plan. We're gonna do that, and let's go over to the table and get started. So first off, we just got everything cut out. Because I want the final product to be a little bit shorter than the pattern calls for, I just cut the skirt pieces out without the extensions, and I figured that would get me pretty close to the length that I wanted. Cut it out. Fun fact, sometimes cutting patterns out is my favorite part of the process, and sometimes it is my least favorite because it's really time consuming. So sometimes it's relaxing and sometimes it just drives me insane. And then the pattern called for sew-on interfacing, but I had iron-on interfacing on hand, and sometimes you just use what you have. So I iron-on interfaced all of the pieces that called for it. Really simple. Okay, so I put the yoke pieces together. My initial thought was that I was going to put the yoke pieces together so that I could pin all of the lace that I wanted on, and then hand sew all that before I added anything else, right? Because it's just going to be easier to do that flat. And I felt like I had enough lace for what I wanted to do. But the more that I looked at kind of the pieces I had and the different varieties, I do not have enough, because this needs to basically be like row after row after row of lace to get the effect that I want, and I do not have enough. I mean, technically, I guess I could if I wanted to use all of this, but I want it to be a couple of different kinds, because in the film, her dress has a couple of different kinds, a couple of different textures, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, am I gonna have to go and buy more lace? And I thought about it, and I looked over in my drawer, and gang, I have so much white lace that's leftovers from old projects. Like, I have this lace that is from stocking, I believe. I have lace left from Ariel. I have lace left from some of these. I don't even remember what they're from, right? But I have a bunch of white lace. It's all different lengths and sizes and textures, and I think could really do what I wanted to do. I'm gonna dye all of this, and I think that that will be enough with the red lace that I have to get all of this covered. But yeah, I'm happy with the color. I think it looks nice. It's not exciting to look at yet, but it will be. It will be, mark my words. Okay, welcome to my kitchen. We are dyeing our lace. I've got a big pile over here of little lace bits and giblets. We're using Grit Dye More in the color, doesn't say. Oh, Racing Red, in the color Racing Red. I'm gonna do about half of the bottle to start, just because if I can, it would be nice to be able to keep some, but you know, we'll see. This is my dye pot. This is a pot I only use for dyeing stuff, right? Because you don't want to eat dye. And I've got the water pretty hot in here, and we're gonna just put things in. I think I'm gonna put them in kind of like leave one in for a little bit, leave another in, because I really want to get a couple of different tones of red, and I think that way they'll be kind of different saturations. I'm sure it'll also depend on like the makeup of it, but that's my thought process. So here we go. And then we're also using my dye paddle. It's just like a cheap thing I got from Joann's years ago that I used to stir up dye. And we're gonna start with this crochet lace, but we're just gonna drop it all in. And I just want to make sure that I get it completely submerged. And I'm gonna leave that one. I'm gonna let this one be the first one because I think I want this one to be the darkest. And then from there, we're gonna add the next one and the next one and the next one. And you know, it's already starting to look red, so we'll see what happens. The rest of this process was pretty straightforward. Like I said, I did one lace, I would leave that in for a couple minutes, and then I would add another, and then I would add another. So some of them were in for as long as 45 minutes, and some of them were only in for 5 minutes. And that gave me a nice combination of tones, which I think worked out really, really well. Just a word of warning, make sure that you rinse your everything out really thoroughly. I didn't rinse everything out as much as I could have, and now the inside of my dryer looks like a crime scene. So do what I say, not as I do. So we are in my living room because I actually had to move my dress format for something else, but have been sewing this on the couch, so it made sense for me to just leave it out here. So this is the current lace pattern. I have one panel completely hand sewn down, and then I still have to do all of this and all of the back. So pray for me. So at this point, it was just a question of hand sewing all of the lace on. It's really time consuming, but really simple. So this is some of my favorite stuff to do while I throw a movie on and just kind of relax at the end of the day. It took me, let's see, I watched Pearl, and then I watched, I think, Terrifier. So it took me 2 movies worth to get it all done. So not terrible. You know, normal things to watch while doing needlework. And then from there, it was just a question of putting stuff together. So I did the shoulder seams and the side seams for that yoke piece. I ended up putting the body together with the facing because the way that the body and the facing were set together was a little complicated. So I ended up doing that off camera. And I decided to pleat my body pieces rather than gathering them. I just felt like it was going to look a little bit more structured, and I was really happy with the final product, so I'm glad that I did it that way. Then once the yoke and the facing with the body pieces on it was put together, I just had to hand sew those together, do a little bit of an invisible stitch so that you can't see it in the final product. Probably not the cleanest stitching job that I've ever done, but you can't see it in the final product, so I'm not going to stress out about it too much. Okay, so this is the first time that it has been in enough of one piece that I've been able to try it on. I just put a belt on so I can see it cinch, because it does call for kind of a belt in the center there. Without it, it actually gives like Victorian nightgown energy, which is cool, but it's not this dress, right? Pearl has a defined waist to her dress. I'm actually quite pleased with it so far. The sleeves being this long is a lot, but I think when I shorten the sleeves to the length they need to be, that I think that's going to kind of minimize, like, even if I just do that, that instantly looks better to me than that, right? So I'm not that worried about that. I'm gonna mark where I wanna take them to. I cut out the cuff originally, but I actually don't know if it's going to go to where I'm going to take it up to, so I may have to cut a new cuff piece out. I'm not 100% sure. Got to add the closures. I just have it pin closed right now. I think I'm going to make a waspy for the center, just because I think it needs a little bit more definition through here, and I think that that'll really help kind of keep these pleats down, keep everything looking the way that I want it to. And then I'm debating on that because it does look like hers ends in a bow in the back, so I don't know if I'm going to draft like a waspy that ties like a bow. I haven't decided that yet. And then it's going to need the ruffle on the bottom. But it's in the home stretch. Like, it's wearable. It's coming together. And I'm really, really pleased with it. I think it's going to be really, really fun to wear. It's actually very comfortable. And I like the way that it twirls. I initially was planning to wear it with an underskirt underneath because I wanted a really exaggerated look, but now I'm not so sure because I do like the twirliness of it, and in terms of the shape, this is probably a little bit more accurate. So we'll see, but I'm pleased. Hey, I'm sorry, I just looked at the frame. If this is not a perfect encapsulation of my two personalities right here, me dressed in this, making a serial killer character dress? I don't know. It just feels very me. So it is a new evening of work on this. I didn't film it because I didn't think about it as I was doing it. Initially, I thought I was just going to cut it out, and then I kind of kept going. But I added our ruffle to the very bottom of our skirt. You know, I ran out of this fabric. I didn't have enough, so I had to go get something that was a close match. And I feel like you can kind of tell that it's not exactly the same, but I feel like I'm going to get away with it because I'm also going to make my corset belt out of it, so I think it'll tie in together. I think it'll be fine. Also, not everybody is a lunatic like me. Most people probably won't even notice that. But anywho, I put that together and I cut the sleeves. And I feel like even just cutting the sleeves and shortening them already has this looking so much more like Pearl's dress to me. So the goal for tonight is we're going, honestly, my goal, if I can do it, is I would really like to get the entire dress finished and wearable. Like the rhinestones, that'll be another day, but I figure I'm going to add a band to the bottom of these sleeves, right? So I can have a little bit of puff at the end here. I'll probably put some lace on that. I'm going to add my closures up at the top. I think I'm going to do snaps and just have those front buttons be fashion because I only want to put a couple of those on, and this has to close all the way down to here. So I'm going to do my snaps, put those fashion buttons on. If I have enough of the lace left, I kind of want to do another layer of this lace along here. The goal for tonight is for this to get completely put into one piece so that I can wear it without having to pin anything. And then depending on how far I get at that point, I might also cut out the corset belt tonight. I'm not 100% sure, but it's still, the night is relatively young and she's looking really cute. So I think that I might be able to make it happen. Let's find out. So the first part of doing my closures was just measuring out where I wanted them to go. I measured and marked for the inside snaps and for the fashion buttons at the same time. It was just easier. The fashion buttons were going to go on the outside, so I only needed a couple of them. I think I only did them every 2 inches. And then I did snaps every 1.5 inches, just so it'll be nice and secure. So the snaps are on the inside and the fashion buttons are going to go on the outside. I am using heat disappearing markers for this. So once I iron it, those marks are going to completely disappear, which is the coolest thing. Okay, so I have cut myself some sleeve bands and serged them really fast. I just did a real quick little like band, measured it around my forearm. These should work perfect. So I'm going to put these together and then I'm going to attach them to the sleeve real quick and dirty. It'll probably mean I'll have to gather it a little bit, but I think that with that I can just kind of hit it and poke it. And so I closed those sleeve bands up and added them to the bottom of my sleeve. Like I said, I did gather them slightly, but I didn't do them properly. I just kind of kind of crunched up the little bit of fabric that was left. I really just eased it. That's the correct word for what I'm trying to say, because I knew that I was just going to be a tiny bit. And then while I was adding that sleeve band on, I also added on some lace. I just kind of sandwiched a little bit of the lace in between the band and the sleeve as I was putting it together. And then that way, when it's done, I have a nice little lace trim on that band at the end. And then because I had enough of this red lace left, I also took some and sewed some onto the top of the skirt ruffle on the bottom, just because I felt like it looked a little bit better having that lace at the top and the bottom. I think it breaks it up and makes the difference in those two reds look a little more purposeful. Then from there, it was hand sewing time. I added on my fashion buttons first, just because it was easier for me to do the bigger thing first. And then once I had my fashion buttons put on, I also sewed my snaps on the inside. I did the male parts under the fashion buttons and then the female parts on the other side so that they still all kind of fasten the same way. Okay, so this is the first try on with everything finished on the dress. I'm really happy with it. I think that the sleeves came out just right. I think the length of them came out just right. I like that little pop of the lace just to break that up. I'm really glad that I added the extra lace to the skirt. I think it breaks it up really nice. I have boots on the way. I have an axe on the way, which I'm very excited about. And then the last piece that needs to get made is an actual belt, not this pink stretchy belt I keep using for fittings. But I'm gonna cut out the base corset belt pattern and I'm gonna get that started, and hopefully I can get that done in the next day or two. And we can have this whole thing done pretty soon, hopefully. Okay, so it is the next day. The dress is entirely done and put together. I only have a couple hours until I have to get changed for work. I would have gotten more done today, but I actually had my appointment to go get my nails done. And since I'm gonna have them this way by the time that I shoot this, I got them kind of pearl themed. I don't know if you can see, but they are bloody. I asked for like sparkly blood nails, and then I got crystals on them. It's so funny because I got home from my nail appointment, nails like this, came home to this being delivered. So slay. But anyway, at this point, all that's left is the wig and the belt. The wig I will work on probably tomorrow. The base wig came and it wasn't exactly what it was advertised as, so I've got to decide how I'm going to handle that. But I know exactly how I'm going to do the belt. So I am going to be using this corset belt pattern. It is by Corsets by Caroline on Etsy. I used the exact same pattern to make my belt for my Elvira costume when I redid that, and I really, really like it. It's nice and small and minimal, but it does give a lot of shaping, and I feel like this needs a little bit more shape and then just a little bit of like a detail here in the middle. So I'm gonna be using this pattern. I actually think that I am probably going to make it slightly bigger because this is for a 26 waist, which is what I did when I did this the first time. But I've gained a little weight, and obviously you want it to have some tension, right? So that it does shape. But I think I'm gonna extend it just a little bit at the back. I'm gonna cut it out of that same red as lace to the top and the bottom. And then I also think that I might add a star on in the center, like do some beading and make kind of like a star, like an Art Deco kind of star aesthetic moment. But yeah, so we're gonna cut that out. I'm gonna use the last of that red, and then I have some Coutil left over for making Tinkerbell, so I'll just use some of that. Okay, so we're gonna go over to the table, we're gonna cut out our pieces, and we're gonna get that going. So this pattern does not come with seam allowance, so instead of just pinning and cutting out the pattern piece, I actually traced it onto my fabric with a little bit of seam allowance on it. I think I added about 1/2 inch. I can't fully remember now. And then I also extended out the back just a little bit. I think maybe about 1 inch on each side, just so I would have a little bit more space in the back. Then I just traced around my pieces with the seam allowance added for the Coutil so that they would be the exact same size. Then on the inner structure, I added some twill tape to just be my boning channels. Really, really simple. I did this really fast because this isn't a super intense corset. I just need a couple of bones for some stability. And then because this is a pretty simple structural thing, I used cable ties as my bones. Real cheap, real simple, threw those in there. Then on the top layer, I decided that I was going to embroider an outline for my star before I did any beadwork on it. I decided to go for a 8-pointed, more Art Deco star because I felt like a 5-pointed star made it look a little bit too Wonder Woman-y, and Art Deco would have kind of been starting to become a thing in this time period, so I felt like it was okay, even though it's a little bit of a fudge with the time period. But I just embroidered that outer piece. It just made my life way easier. Shout out to Trixie Mattel, by the way. I watch her videos so much while I'm working. From there, I machine basted both of my pieces together, just lengthened my stitch length to as long as it could go, just so that I could have both pieces physically sandwiched together to add the binding to them. Okay, so the camera died for a hot second there, so I did not capture this last bit because I didn't realize that I wasn't filming. But basically, took that corset belt that I cut out and basted together, and I just took some seam binding, went around the whole thing, folded it over. I just hand did it on the underside. It's not the cleanest thing I've ever made, but this isn't a competition piece or anything, so it's really not that deep. And then I wanted to incorporate the last of this red lace because I felt like it would help kind of break up the center of that dress because it's so much just red, and I felt like having that nice little detail would be nice, and I really like it. I think it's gonna look really nice with the dress. And then from there, I just took it over to my grommet press so I could punch in my holes so that I can lace it up to actually wear. 10 out of 10, I genuinely recommend getting a grommet press if you do any corset work at all. It's so much easier than trying to hammer the holes in. I hate hammering them. Okay. Gang, can we talk about it? Can we... Tell me this is not a serve. Tell me the belt does not make this a serve. Like, the shape, first off, snatched. She's snatched. Like, and I think that I really love, like, just the little bit of an extra historical detail that it adds. I really love this shape that it gives to the top. It does make that top a little bit more of like that boxy shape that Pearl's dress was, and then it makes the skirt feel even fuller and more twirly, which I really like. And I think that the lace helps break everything up a little bit because before it was just like this sea of red, and I feel like having that really does break it up. I do think that it definitely needs the jewels for the star because right now this feels a little empty to me. I think that will really kind of add that last little pop that this needs. I haven't decided if I'm gonna put stones throughout the lace or not, because initially that was my thought, but now I'm not sure. Before I do anything else, I am gonna go make dinner because I can't remember the last time that I ate, which is not a good sign. So I'm going to take a break, make some dinner, and then I'll meet you back on the couch for some stonework. And then from there, it was time to start my beadwork. I went with bigger beads in the center and then smaller and smaller beads as I got closer to the edges. I felt like that would help fill everything in, but then also give everything kind of a more detailed like point when I got to the end of the star. This was actually really soothing. I don't do beading that much. I feel like I should start doing beading on my costumes more. What do you guys think? And then once the star was done, I also decided that I was going to add some beads through the lace on the outer edges of the corset. And I also ended up adding some to the lace on the yoke at the top of the dress, just to add some little spots where it would catch the light and give it a little bit more of that kind of magical quality that I wanted to go for. Okay, so it's the next day. My dress is done. My belt is done. My boots are arriving in the mail tomorrow. So I'm so close close to getting the whole thing together. The last thing we need to do is we need to work on my wig, hence why we were out in the living room with the head block here. When I was initially planning this cosplay, I was thinking that I would just use my own hair because my hair was really long at that point and I wore it in pigtails and braids all the time. And then about 2 weeks ago, I impulsively chopped a bunch of my length off and shaved the back of my head up pretty high. So I can't really do that low braid anymore because there's no hair down there, right? I attempted it. It's not the same. It's not the same shape. It's not the same look. And this is a costume that I know that I'm gonna bring to a couple of things. So I was like, you know what? I'll just get a cheap lace front. It doesn't have to be something super nice because it's literally gonna be in braids. So I'll just get a lace front. I'll do it up really fast. And I ordered just a chocolate brown lace front off of Amazon. You know, again, got one that was pretty cheap because it was like, it just needs to be in braids. And I need to show y'all this. I need to know if everybody else thinks this is as funny as I think it is. Pretty nice wig. The color is pretty good. The length is probably longer than I need, but it was either short or long. So I was like, I'll get a longer one, and if I have to cut it off, I can. But here's the gag. This is the thing that when I opened it was sending me. There's literally, it's a lace front technically. There's lace in the front. I'm sorry, you guys. I think that is the funniest thing in the world. I am going to attempt to style this and see if I can do it. But my concern is, if I was just wearing this wig down like this, the fact that there's only lace right here probably wouldn't matter. But all of this is going to be getting pulled back away from the face. And I have hot pink under there right now, so it would be very noticeable if that does not match my hair, right? So I'm gonna try. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to take these front pieces and do almost like a roll with them, because in some pictures Pearl's hair kind of looks like that. I'm gonna pin this and we're gonna see what we can do. I don't even, like, wow. And I guess I just pin it here. This is so stupid. Okay, we're gonna, you know what? We're just gonna do what we can. We're gonna see if this is gonna work. Worst case, I will just return it and get something else, but I really don't want to have to do that if I don't have to. So let's see what we can do. First up, I just brushed the whole thing out. Thankfully, it's at least decent quality hair. Not a ton came out. It's pretty thick and full, so I at least had that going for me. But styling it, I really was not sure what I was gonna do. The front of her hair, in some of the shots, not in all of them, is kind of like smoothed down in like almost a roll. And I think if I can do something like that with the front pieces, then I can probably approximate the look that I want. So I think what I'm gonna do, where's my sectioner? I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this front piece and I'm gonna section it off. And then I'm gonna take all of this and put that in a ponytail. And then I'm gonna roll this, incorporate that into the ponytail, and then braid all of that. That's my current thought. Okay, so I did side one just to make sure that this was gonna work. I'm gonna do the same thing on this side. And this is just me doing that other side. I took that back piece, tried to get it as smooth as I possibly could, put that into the low ponytail, and then that front section, before I rolled it in, I did give it a little bit of a base tease, just so there's a little bit of volume in that at the front. And also because in my experience, cheap synthetic hair will do what you want a little bit easier if you give it a little bit of a base tease first. If it's too new and it's too nice, it will not want to go where you want it to go. So if you want to kind of train it, doing a little bit of a base tease on it will often help you to get where you want, even if you don't necessarily want a huge amount of volume. You can always brush the volume out, but it will do what you want a little bit more. And then once I had that section incorporated, it was just a matter of getting that sprayed into place and braiding, braiding. I probably could have stood to thin this wig out a little bit. These braids are pretty thick, but I feel like it works pretty well because my whole dress is a little bit exaggerated. So I think that it's fine. Like, it doesn't necessarily look superhuman, but I'm not trying to go for something that's super duper realistic here. So I think I can kind of get away with it. And then Pearl has a big, huge bow. So I did this a really, really simple way. I took a piece of blue scrap fabric that I had, maybe about half a yard. I cut that in half so I would have 2 long strips, took those over to the serger, and I decided to sandwich in a piece of white lace in between my 2 pieces just for another extra little pop, because again, we're doing kind of a magical version. And I incorporated those together into one big long tube, crisscrossed that over, and added a center piece just to turn it into a little bow. Okay, so this is the wig with the bow. I think the bow really makes it. This is the look overall. My boots get here tomorrow, but other than that, everything is done. I'm actually really happy with it. I'm really, really happy with it. I'm really excited to shoot this. Tell me I don't look like the poster. I'm really happy with this. I think that the amount of beading I added adds a nice little pop without being too much. I was worried that it might seem like it was too much, but I'm really happy with it. I'm really excited. And now my husband needs me to pick him up from something, which means I'm probably just gonna go like this. I'm just gonna pick him up like this from a punk venue. Oh my God. Okay, let's go.